And welcome to another Wednesday evening where we will be not be looking at the Dragon's Prophecy, latest book by Messianic Jewish Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. Tonight is part two of a special session on the current events in Syria. And so, like last week, I will be sharing. It actually worked out that we didn't get to the last video. We'll start with that one this evening, as I keep forgetting to bring the mic over. I'll bring the mic over. And we will start and end this evening with video as well and have some discussion and look at some things in between. Daniel chapter 12 is the scripture we will be basing out of this evening. So if you'd like to find your way over there, while I go grab the mic and we'll get the ball rolling here. There we are. So let's start off reading Daniel chapter 12. We'll read the whole chapter. So if you haven't read the book yet and you've been wanting to get around to it, sorry for the spoiler alert. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And this is about 536 BC, thereabouts. So 2,500 years ago. Daniel 12, verse 1. Now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. This is the angel talking to Daniel. And there will be a time of distress, such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. And those who have insight will shine like the glow of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness, like the stars forever and ever. But as for you, Daniel, keep these words secret and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will roam about, and knowledge will increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others were standing, one on this bank of the stream, and the other on that bank of the stream. And someone said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? And I heard the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, as he raised his right hand and his left toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times, and a half a time. And as soon as they finish smashing the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed. But as for me, I heard but did not understand. So I said, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these events? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for these words will be kept secret and sealed up until the end time. Many will be purged, cleansed, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand, but those who have insight will understand. And from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who is patient and attains to the 1,335 days. But as for you, go your way to the end, then you will rest and rise for your allotted portion at the end of the age. Aren't we glad that cleared everything up for us now? Very, very important, powerful chapter. And I'm using this as a foundation groundwork. I'm not going to go through the whole chapter bit by bit. A couple things worth pointing out. So at this end time, Michael, the archangel, the great prince, he will arise. So he's going to be a factor in this. Those found written in the book will be rescued. Verse 3, those who have insight will shine like the glow of the expanse of heaven, leading many to righteous, like stars forever and ever. So there will still be people here doing this. There will still be the Lord's people. His church, his congregation, was the congregation of Israel, transitioned over into, not replacement, but carried over into the church as spiritual Israel, as sons of faith of Abraham. We'll have the insight. We'll be sharing this word. We'll be leading others to righteousness, of course, to the Lord's righteousness, not of our own. But a lot of these words are going to be hidden. Now, Daniel wrote this book. He died, and we have his words, and these words been around since then. But what is going to be happening towards the end time will be things will fall into place. Jesus said, you're not going to know the day or the hour, but also you are to be spiritually alert, spiritually aware of the signs. And he fussed at the religious leaders saying, you can tell the signs in the sky, but not of the weather, but not the signs in the sky of the spiritual times. And so he said, you'll know the times, but you won't know the specific day and hour. And so Daniel has this further conversation where it says, in the middle of verse 7, he heard the man dressed in linen above the waters of the stream, raise his right hand and left toward heaven, swore by him who lives forever, that this would be happening for a time, times, and a half time. So 1 plus 2 plus a half is 3.5. So here's our 3.5 years for the Great Tribulation. As soon as they finish smashing the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed. So holy people will have power. That power will be smashed by the Antichrist during these 3.5 years. And so, which again shows these holy people have to be there for this to happen. And so, verse 10, many will be purged, cleansed, and refined. As I've mentioned before, as the darkness gets darker, the light's going to be shining brighter in contrast to that. So the separating of the chaff and the wheat. And though a lot of folks are going to fall away and blow away the great apostasy, but those who are resolved and determined, the Lord will honor and see through. He says again, verse 10, many will be purged, cleansed, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly. None of the wicked will understand, but those who have insight will understand. As we draw close to the Lord, stay close to him, he will let us know as things are happening where he is in all this. We'll be able to see and understand. And again, verse 11, from the time the regular sacrifice is abolished, so it's classically understood that the Antichrist will come into the classic thought is that there'll be a rebuilt temple with sacrifices that the Antichrist will then come into, set himself up as God, or taking God's, kicking God out, basically, just like Satan tried to do from day one. Remember the spirit behind the scenes. So he's going to stop the sacrifice system. He's going to set himself in there. Abomination of desolation. He says there will be 1,290 days. You do the math, divide that by 30, that's 3.5 years. So there we have that again. Verse 12 is fascinating. We'll talk more about this as we go. Blessed is the one who is patient and attains to the 1335 days. Well, what's that? It's 45 days more than 1290. Okay, so what? What's going to happen at 1335? Well, there are some different thoughts on that, but I'm going to bring out a different connection to 1335 that we've talked about months ago in our Wednesday night classes relating to World War I and tying that into what's happening in 2024 and what's going to be happening next year. So we'll get to that. So those were the highlights I wanted to hit on Daniel 12 before getting into the other stuff. But before I do that, just on this reading and these things I've shared so far, any thoughts, any reactions, comments, questions? I came to a realization the other day. I ask oftentimes, does anyone have any questions? And I think what I want to start asking too, is anyone lost? Is anyone confused? Anyone foggy? Because maybe me just saying, does anyone have any questions? Well, I'm so lost and confused, I don't even know what question to ask. So I don't want anyone to be any of the above. I'm here for y'all. We take this as slow as we need to because it's very important that this is all for our understanding. Will we get all the details and again, chase all the rabbits? No, but the basic gist of what is being said in God's word is what's important. So those things that I brought out, is everyone comfortable enough with what's being said? And we'll see that play out. Or does anyone have any thoughts? Or is anyone just completely lost?
It's the same as end of days, just
yes, absolutely. And so this is a very important distinction to make too. And this is where there's some confusion as folks read scriptures. So there's the Great Tribulation, which lasts 3.5 years, second half of the week, so to speak. And Jesus says in Matthew 24 and other places, after that Great Tribulation, then the Son of Man will come and with the riding on the clouds of the sky and send forth his angels to the four corners, gather his very elect. So it's after that. So according to Jesus in Matthew 24 and other places, after the 3.5 years, then will be the return of Christ, the resurrection of the dead in Christ, and the rapture of those alive in Christ. Same day, same pretty much moment. And at that time, after the 3.5 years. Now, if the rapture happens before the end times, I won't complain. Well, I should say before the tribulation. I won't complain about being wrong about that. I'll be quite happy to bypass all that. But just as I'm reading the scriptures, this is what I'm seeing laid out. And so after the Lord's return, then comes the day of wrath. God's wrath on the earth, Jesus cleaning house and setting up his judgment and all that stuff. Antichrist and false prophet are cast in the lake of fire. Satan's bound for 1,000 years. We have the millennium. After that 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, then Satan is loosed very briefly, and then he ends up in the same lake of fire as the Antichrist. And so the day of wrath is not to be confused with the tribulation. It looks like in the scriptures, there are people who suffer through the tribulation. Revelation talks about tribulation saints that are seen there in heaven, who are martyred during the tribulation. So going through the tribulation is not the same as going through the day of the Lord's wrath at the end. The Lord's wrath is unleashed on the world that was following Satan and the Antichrist and his false prophet. And so all that will play out. So get the distinction there. It's an important difference to keep in mind as we look at scriptures. So when we read scripture, it's important to ask, is this talking about the tribulation? Is this talking about the millennium? Is this talking about the day of wrath in between? And so on from there. So with that foundation laid, let us dive into our study for this evening. I have this up here to, let's see. I want to do this. I want to do that. There we go. So I changed the map out like I did in Sunday school to where you can see the boundaries. So here's Afghanistan, which is, as I mentioned last week, is still going to be a very important factor here. So Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, then Lebanon. Thank you. And then here is Israel. And here is the boundary of Israel going to the boundary sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, for the Exodus Sea crossing there. So that's Israel's boundary right there, going right to the sea. Hence the name Boundary Sea, Yam Suf. And that's Jordan on that side over there. Lebanon is right here. Yeah, and what we're going to see is going into Lebanon and Syria here, we've got what's referred to as the Golan Heights, if you've heard that name before. So we're going to talk about that as we go here. So Damascus, capital of Syria. So that's kind of the layout that we're looking at. And for tonight, I want to start with this video. This is the one I did not get to last week, which is A-OK. It actually was published just that same day, a week ago today, on that Wednesday. And this is about Israel coming in after Bashar fell. And so we'll take a look at that, then get into some other things. And I'll have, again, one final video that came out the day after this from someone else. So here is our good friend,
Guys,
Israel, my channel, YouTube channel. And here's what he had to share on last Wednesday about Israel coming into the area. And then we'll talk about it from there.
guys, something incredible is happening in the Middle East. The fall of the Assad regime has begun a domino effect that cannot be stopped now. Since the fall of the Assad regime, the Israeli Air Force has hit hundreds of targets within Syria. Even the Israeli Navy was involved, targeting the warships of the regime in the port city of Latakia. And just remember that not long ago, a very important Russian base was located just next to Latakia. So let's take a look at what was left of this port. So those are footages a day after the successful attack by the Israeli military. And you can see the ships are half sunk and totally destroyed. Now, the fact that the Israeli military struck the Syrian Navy so close to the former Russian military base shows us that the game has changed. The rules have changed. And now we will see something that we haven't seen because Israel was blocked by Russia. And this strike actually for me was a surprise because rarely I saw Israel striking by their own navy power. Usually it was by planes, by the Air Force, but this time they struck using those warships. So it's quite special.
By now, we've all heard about GameStop and how shares skyrocketed in a matter of days.
I'm sure
What if I told you?
But it also shows that since Russia is gone now, the Israeli Navy can operate in a much more unrestricted way. Later in the video, I will actually speak about what it means when Russia withdraws from this area. But before I do that, I want to show you the destruction done in Syria. So here you have a helicopter of Assad, and here you have just what is left of the helicopter right now. So you can see destruction. Here is a hangar, and again, the destruction. And here are some planes. So just in this one day, Israel was able to destroy all MiG planes that were left over. So no more MiGs in Syria. Now, you might have heard that the Israeli army is moving into Syria. Now, what actually happened is that Israel began creating a buffer zone between Syria and Lebanon and Israel. And Israel did this for two reasons. First of all, because the situation in Syria right now is very unstable and dangerous. And the second reason was announced by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, on the Golan Heights. So if you look at this map, you will see two types of territories on the Golan Heights. The first one is like a light brown color. This is the territory that Israel took during the Six-Day War. But you can also see on this map, this very thin light gray color territory. And this territory is called the Area of Separation, which was established in 1974, so after the Yom Kippur War, which was in 73. But you see, this agreement of disengagement from this territory was done between Israel and the government of Syria, the regime that no longer is here. And what actually happened is that after the regime has fallen, the soldiers of the regime just left. They just totally abandoned their posts and left, escaped. So there was no security in this area. And I already know what's going to happen now, what the media will say. Oh, Israel is breaking the law. They are taking more territory. They're doing so much. Already they have taken the Golan Heights and now they're taking more and more. They have no end to their appetite. But think about what other countries would do if they were in the same situation as Israel. If there was war in the neighboring country, if there was total chaos and nobody knew how it's going to end, every country would do everything to secure its citizens. And this is exactly what Israel is doing. And now let me illustrate why this territory is strategically important. So you see, we are moving north from the Sea of Galilee, and soon you will see a strip of mountains. This is the Golan Heights. So everybody who is on top of those mountains will have a great advantage over their enemies. You can see everything from the top of these mountains. And actually, since the war of Yom Kippur, for the first time, Israel had its soldiers on the top of Mount Hermon. So now you can see a picture of the soldiers of Israel on the top of Mount Hermon looking at Damascus. And I'm not exaggerating. Look where Damascus is. This is this territory now in the purple color, and it's like glued to this range of mountains. So here you can see a few photos with the Israeli soldiers once again on this very important territory that is their heritage, if we look at the Bible. So if you ask me, the Israeli military was very, very wise and acted exactly how the Israeli citizens want them to act, strategically. And now the enemies of Israel have a big problem because Israel is controlling the highest point in this area. Shapobah, Israel. So this is the first good news for Israel. They are controlling the high ground. The second one is connected to Iran. You see, Iran always had this dream of creating the Shia crescent of influence. But the problem for them right now is that the crescent is totally broken. Without Lebanon and without Syria, they have a big problem, and their influence now is threatened. And I really like some of the images online that I found. For example, this is a route from Tehran to Lebanon, and they can't make it because the road is closed. This is another one that I saw, and I think it's very accurate. And it's all referring to the Iran supply of Hezbollah in Syria. Now that Assad is gone, this supply cannot function. But the situation is actually reversed in the case of Israel. Now that Israel has destroyed all this military equipment within Syria, the doors to Iran are open. And why does Israel want to attack Iran anyway? Because Iran wants to have a nuclear weapon. And that wouldn't be a problem in itself, but Iran is committed to destroying Israel. And that's a problem for Jewish people. So guys, we are on a timer now. Because Iran lost its influence in Syria and it's losing its influence in Lebanon, Iran will do everything to speed up their nuclear weapon development. And Israel, even though it would be a good time to attack Iran because Iran is totally shocked at what has happened, Israel will probably wait until there will be a change in the White House. Unless, of course, something big will happen. So the Russians basically moved out of Syria. They moved out all of its ships and very expensive anti-air defense systems. And that's very good if Israel wants to operate in Syria. But then again, this is Russia. They may return. We don't know that yet. It's a huge blow for their honor. They may regroup and actually do a revenge on what actually has happened. So we will see. And we must also be mindful of what Turkey will do now. Whereas for Russia, this was a huge blow. For Turkey, it was a huge boost. And Turkey will want to keep that influence in Syria and develop their power in the region. So we have to look out for Turkey and, of course, Iran, what they will do, because they're pretty quiet too now. So everybody's kind of trying to understand what is actually happening. So we have to also be vigilant and observe. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that today's episode was interesting for you. Please.
So, was it interesting? Reactions, thoughts, questions?
Completely help you understand what's been going on now. We read it in papers or we hear about it. Well, I hear it
Sure.
on that channel, Newsmax channel, but having it out there so you can see it rather than just hear about it.
Yeah.
Is very helpful.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that.
Oh, yeah, I like all the maps and everything, but I still don't actually understand why, like, Bashar Assad has been there for so long. What happened? What happened all of a sudden? I don't know.
Yep, we're going to talk about that. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. We touched on it some last week. We'll get a little more in depth on that this week today on the fall of Bashar al-Assad and why that happened. While we talk about these different things and look at these different things, I don't want anyone to get too caught up or frustrated trying to remember all these different names, especially these Middle Eastern names and these different groups. Just know that there are folks who are supportive of Israel and those who aren't. Going right back to Genesis 12, those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. And so folks that normally don't even get along with each other, like the Sunni and the Shia branches of the Islamic religion, they will come together with the common enemy of Israel. Now, just real quick, the difference between the two and that split, the descendants of Muhammad, the founder of the religion, 6 centuries after Jesus, the inventor of that religion, he, after his passing, there was basically a split, just like with Alexander the Great, split 4 ways. This time there's a split as far as the caliphate goes. So if you follow this caliph guy, then you're on this side. If you follow that caliph guy, you're on that side. And then different other differences developed as they went. But it was basically a split like that is what happened. And so with that, now let's get into some other fun stuff to share and tie this into Daniel. So I'm going to tie in Daniel 12, Islam, and World War I, and 2024 and 25. So let's see about doing that here. So I want to go to 1917. Y'all remember when we talked about World War I? Been a while. Had a few things happen since then, so we're going across our timeline. So 1917, and I'm going to tie in the 1335 of Daniel 12:12. So let's see, 1917, there we are. This area here, just a little bit of that. Yeah, here we go. So Islam in 1335. So September 16th, let me just go ahead and start the slideshow here. So September 16th of 1917 was the last day of the Sabbath year, the Shemitah. The Shemitah, this is courtesy of Jonathan Cahn back in his book, The Shemitah, Mystery of the Shemitah. It reaches culmination on the Day of Remission. During the Shemitah, this Shemitah, there are in process 4 massive collapse of major world powers. The Russian Empire is no more after World War I. The Ottoman Empire is no more after World War I. The German Empire, as it stood, is no more. The Austria-Hungary Empire is no more. 4 empires that have been around for a long time, different start dates for each of them, all the same year, gone. 4, he mentions, is the number given in scripture connected to world kingdoms and empires. Daniel's vision of the future kingdoms, there are 4 kingdoms there. Remember the concept of 4 nations. That will come up when we talk about 2025 in the final video. Remind me of that. Someone make a mental note or jot it down. 4 nations, 2025. So that was September 16th of 1917. The following month, October 15th of 1917, Mata Hari was executed for espionage by a French firing squad at the age of 41. The little trivia there. The very next day, Tuesday, October 16th is the key here, 1917. On Tuesday, October 16th of 1917, the British government was informed that President Woodrow Wilson is in favor of declaring the land of Israel for the Jews. So with that support, they're able to have the Balfour Declaration for that. So October 16th, 1917. And this will bring us into 1335. So here we go. So just as we have our calendar, the Hebrews have their calendar, there is a Muslim calendar, an Islamic calendar. And just as the Jewish calendar doesn't go by our ADBC, would you believe that? They don't use the Christ references there. They actually start from their year of creation and go forward. So we're in year 5,000 something on the Jewish calendar. So too, for the Islamic calendar, their year 1 starts with founding of the religion and on forward. So what does this have to do with 1335? Well, the year that the Ottoman Empire, after 400 years of occupying the Holy Land, the year they were kicked out and actually fled, was the year 1335 on the Muslim calendar. And in fact, the last day of the Muslim calendar, see, it starts on September 19th and it lasts for 29 days. Well, that ends, scroll down here, October 16th, 1917. So the very Muslim year, 1335, ends the day that Woodrow Wilson tells the British go for it with declaring the land for the Jews. So how does Jonathan Cahn tie these in? Here's what he says. 1335, let's read Daniel 12:12 again. Blessed is the one who is patient and attains to the 1335 days. So it's after, in the future, after the tribulation, after the occupation of the temple and the Holy Land. So after it's occupied, the occupier is kicked out after the Great Tribulation. So what Jonathan Cahn says here, 1335 is the number signifying the end of the occupation of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. On the Islamic calendar, the year happens to be 1335. 1917 is 1335 years from the rise of Islam. October 16th is the very day that seals or ends the year 1335. So the Islamic calendar just happens to mark the year 1917 with the same number given in the Hebrew Bible, signifying the end of an occupation. The number appears not only on coins, but over the Islamic world that year. It's not only on coins, but all over the Islamic world in that year. The year of the defeat of the last Islamic empire, ending their occupation of the land, an occupation which lasted exactly 400 years, from Salim the Grim in 1517 to 1917. And by the way, for the 400-year occupation, 8's the number signifying a new beginning. So 8 times 50 jubilees, 400 years that the Muslims occupied the Holy Land. And so the Islamic year 1335 to the very day there, from when U.S. backed Britain in declaring the land for the Jews after the Ottoman soldiers had fled the end of World War, towards the end of World War I there. So there's that connection tying in 1335 to the Islamic religion. And again, we're going to be specifically focused on the radical Islamic forces that are targeting Israel and want to wipe out the Jewish people. So that'll be the emphasis, as we've seen moving forward in history, how the hostility and resentment towards the Jews and the intention to wipe them out was basically transferred from the Nazis to the radical Muslims in the 30s and 40s and on from there. And they have kept it up since then. So any reactions, thoughts, questions on 1335 here? Now, seeing a tie-in in past history doesn't mean there's not going to be a future place for the 1335 as well. Oftentimes in scripture, there is a partial fulfillment, a current fulfillment, then a later major culmination, ultimate fulfillment. So some people kind of pendulum swing, oh, it's all here, oh, it's all there. Like Matthew 24, when Jesus talks about the end times. Well, is he talking about Rome destroying the temple in the year 70, or is he talking about end times? The answer is yes. There's some application there, but there's a further application. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Be able to see the spiritual pattern is the key to all of that. But any reactions, questions on 1335 here? All good? Okay. Well, one quick little tidbit from the year 1933. 1933. Yeah. Here we go. The Anglo-Palestine exhibition. Agricultural Hall. So it's like their Tulare Ag Fair every year. Agricultural Hall in London, June 7th to 17th, 1933. Anglo-Palestine exhibition. But notice something here. Anglo, okay, English, the English flag there. Palestine, Israeli flag. So again, showing that historically speaking, that land was always considered belonging to the Israelites, to the Jews. It was always their land. The word Palestine was only hijacked after Israel became a nation again in 1948. Yeah. So that's fun. Yeah. So what I want to do now, before we do the final video, I want to I shared something from CIA former agent Sarah Adams. And I'm going to share a little bit more from her. In fact, a fair amount. Let's see. I'll just break this down to the bottom. Here we go. So let's go to here. Now, everything that I'm sharing is available to the public, so this isn't classified information or anything. But if you know who to listen to, there are some interesting things to uncover. So here's Sarah Adams. Again, she just put out a book recently, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. She was tapped by Trey Gowdy to lead the investigation into what happened with Benghazi and be very involved in all of that. And she's very close still with the guys there, including Boone. They do stuff together. But anyway, here's what she says about what happened to answer your question about Assad and how this happened. So, and it'll be on 2 slides here. The first major operation of the Islamic Army should have everyone on edge. For those unaware, Al-Qaeda, which again translated means the base, Al-Qaeda is deeply involved in what's happening in Syria. Here's a critical piece of the Blitzkrieg story that I personally know. While this is just one segment of a much larger puzzle, it matters. Al-Qaeda's long-term goal to restore the Islamic Caliphate is advancing. Osama bin Laden envisioned this even if it took 1,000 years, but Hamza bin Laden has been instrumental in fast-forwarding his father's plan. 2 key elements supported the fall of Bashar al-Assad. To answer your question, here we go. 1, the creation of the Islamic Army. Many so-called rebels in Syria are part of the Islamic Army, founded by Hamza bin Laden, led by Al-Qaeda's Hamza al-Ghamdi. This umbrella army includes terrorist groups regardless of sectarian affiliation, including both Sunni and Shia members, with access to 120,000 fighters. The Islamic Army also counts Abu Muhammad al-Julani among its members. He's now leading the group in Syria that has taken over. Number 2, HTS, which is his group. HTS training camps. This is the second factor. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, under Julani's leadership, operates its own training facilities. Initially, their best urban warfare-related camps were outside the region where Al-Tanf base is located, but Julani couldn't train the numbers he needed there safely. He first expanded operations to a town south of Misrata, Libya, establishing a large training camp where one of the 2012 Benghazi attackers serves, present tense, inside as a commander. Part 2. But after the fall of Kabul in August 2021, so we pulled out of Afghanistan, the Taliban came in and took over. That's the fall of Kabul. So after the fall of Kabul in August 2021, Al-Qaeda, particularly its head of covert ops, and 2012 Benghazi plotter Abdul Azim al-Musa bin Ali, who collaborated with Julani, the guy in Syria now, collaborated with Julani on his Libya camp and has supplied fighters to him since 2012, urged Julani to work with Al-Qaeda and its Islamic Army in Afghanistan. Remember, I'm going to keep tying it back to Afghanistan. November of 2021, Julani, the guy in Syria now, agreed to establish a training base in Afghanistan. He met with Taliban leaders, Mullah Yaqub Mujahid, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who offered to provide secure camps in the Nangarhar province, as well as funding, protection, and other resources. Al-Qaeda also contributed weapons from its stockpile. Al-Qaeda also contributed weapons from its stockpile in the Panjshir province, and working with the Taliban, created facilitation routes into Syria. These routes enabled both HTS trained fighters, the guys who are there now, and Islamic Army trainees to travel and lie in wait for the Syrian blitzkrieg. They were already there waiting for the green light. The scale of this operation is staggering. HTS, the group there now, HTS camps alone just inside Afghanistan could train 1,400 terrorists at a time, while Al-Qaeda's Islamic army contributed over 10,000 trained fighters. Yet Afghanistan remains overlooked. Imagine that. Sarah Adams says, I've long advocated for ending Assad's regime, a step that should have been taken over a decade ago to save lives. Syrians must celebrate this victory. However, they must also recognize that their very new enemy will not offer the freedom they fought for. Sounds just like transitioning from Batista to Castro in Cuba. This is the hijacking of a revolution by terrorists, same as Libya. How do I know this? The same terrorists training the Islamic army fought in Libya's revolution. So what you have here, the whole Arab Spring thing, is you've got locals rising up against their corrupt governments. Okay, that's good that they're doing that. But then terrorist groups come in and hijack the overthrow, and then they take power. And so there you go. And this last little note from her here. This is the restoration of the caliphate. They started planning this operation 3 years ago. And Assad actually made a deal as part of the Hamas attacks to not target the pre-positioned terrorists in Syria prior to October 7th. So he knew they were there in Syria getting ready to attack Israel, and he made a deal and he let them be.
And October 7th.
Yeah. And then October 7th happened. Yeah. They came for, it didn't start, it wasn't only Gaza. So the concept of overtures is moot. He showed weakness and he lost. And so reactions, questions, again, don't worry about trying to keep track of all the names. So it's Osama bin Laden's son, Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan, Taliban, and sourcing from Afghanistan over here into Syria for this. And the Islamic Army, Sister Carolyn. Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Right. Which actually, isn't it true that almost every revolution does that? It starts by getting rid of the bad guys so they can hopefully maybe put in a better government, but however, then somebody worse comes in and takes over.
The French Revolution. The overthrowers became the bad guys,
Yeah.
became bad guys. Well, again, it was godless versus our godly revolution. So yeah, big difference there. You're absolutely right. So bingo.
Yeah, except for the Constitution, which is foremost, but is just that this was a revolution where we didn't have bad guys come in and hijack it as you say. That didn't happen. But other
Right.
than that, that is what usually does happen.
Exactly.
Revolution is not really in actual.
Yeah, it was here. Yeah, we as a colony were cutting our ties, declared our independence, and based on these godly reasons that we talk about entitlement. It's actually there in the Declaration of Independence that we are entitled to these things. And he talks about endowed by our Creator, but with certain inalienable rights and all that stuff. Entitled to those things which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them to. And so recognition that godly dignity of life was what it was about. So I'm going to close with this one.
Back.
And this is actually her, Sarah Adams. This is Thursday in this interview here. And it's a little more casual an interview, but some very significant things are said here that I want to make sure we catch. So don't forget the 4 nations in 2025, but here we go. Here is, let me turn this back on. Sarah Adams of CIA, former CIA, being interviewed on Thursday.
Back to the interesting point, you said that you guys think that they've sent at least 15, Al-Qaeda alone has sent at least 1,500 people here in the United States.
Correct.
What do they plan on doing with them?
They have a 2025 multi-coordinated, multi-city plot to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden.
What? Okay, so I've watched you on podcasts. I've never heard that. Could you explain that more?
Yeah, essentially, so we're going to put a report on Monday, but essentially, Al Qaeda is actually who helped plan the Hamas attacks. The Hamas attacks is a dress rehearsal. So the Hamas attacks is the practice attack, and then the big attack is going to be in the United States and then in 4 countries in Europe.
Okay. You guys want to go home and load magazine?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm thinking.
I hope a lot of people come into your shop and stock up. It would be smart.
Really?
Wow.
Yes.
What's the time frame?
All we know is that the attack was planned for 2025.
I mean, I think instead of super bad, we should call you Spooky Sarah.
I do scare a lot of people,
Fucking
but it's not
scary,
my
Sarah.
intention. I just want people to be aware so they can prepare.
Yeah. Be aware.
So, all right, back up. I'm sorry. You said that it was actually Al Qaeda directing Hamas into the October 7th attacks.
Well, what happened is there's multiple groups involved in the plotting. So it was Al Qaeda, the Afghan Taliban, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and then obviously Hamas was the operational element on the ground.
And are all those the same branch of Islam?
No, actually over time, basically, you know, Hamas and Iran have grown into kind of the camp Al Qaeda's in. And a lot of this actually really happened. I mean, it's been happening for a long time. We actually even just saw it in the Libyan revolution, which is 2011, but they really all came together in the Syria fight. That's when a lot of groups started coalescing. You would even see like guys fighting with Al Qaeda, and then a few months later they're fighting with ISIS, and then a few months after they're fighting with Al Qaeda. And so I really think it was the brotherhoods from fighting in Syria that has brought us to this evolution we're at today.
So, okay, there is an active plot that's real for Al Qaeda and its operatives to do a October 7th style attack in the United States and 4 other European countries.
Yes, that's correct.
And organizations that you are a part of are going to issue a report on it on Monday.
No, Monday is actually Boone and I's personal investigation into the plotting and training that happened in advance of the October 7th Hamas attacks.
Okay.
But it's a lot of the same individuals, as you can imagine, who are also planning our homeland attack.
Did they get any inspiration from the Tet Offensive attacks and General Giap of Vietnam?
Well, we haven't seen any evidence of that. I doubt it. It's possible, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just it reminded me so much of the Tet Offensive, October 7th. You know what I mean? And that was all planned by Giap. You know, and to me it looked like the same thing. And then right when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, they're going to do that in the United States." And but I thought it would happen a while ago. Why hasn't it happened so far? They want the election to be, do they even care about the election?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about them discussing the election. The thing is, you know, it takes time to train properly. Like I said, they needed to train everybody in Afghanistan, and they actually have done a more standardized training. So over the years, Al Qaeda's had a bunch of failed like bombing plots, right? Like the underwear bomber is a really good example. So they
Who was the underwear bomber?
It was basically a Christmas Day plot out of Detroit, and he really didn't do his bomb correctly. It would have been very unfortunate if it had gone off correctly.
The wrong underwear?
Yeah.
It was tidy whities instead of bikini briefs.
Yeah. So they had a lot of things like that happen, as you can imagine. So they want to make sure everyone's properly trained, but they're done. So they've completed the training of all the homeland attackers. And then, as you can imagine, then they have to get them here, right? Through mostly they are shooting for legal immigration, but if they need to, illegal immigration. So the training's done and they've already been forward deployed. So a large number of them are already here in the United States. They made it successfully, and none of them, from what we know so far, were caught.
None.
Zero.
What about the guy they caught on video saying, you don't know my name, but you will know my name?
Yeah, I mean,
Who's that guy?
I don't know exactly. I mean, there were some guesses in the press. He's clearly from one of the stands, right? In Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, from how he speaks.
Pakistan?
What?
Pakistan?
Yeah, sure, Pakistan. So yeah, he's friends with Borat. So that guy makes me nervous, right? When you watch a guy in that video and he has that kind of confidence, he's somebody very senior within some sort of group. Maybe it's not a terrorist group. He could have also been senior, in a military and intelligence agency, but he definitely had an idea, it seemed like a negative view of America, but he was coming in, right? And that's the people we should be worried the most about.
It's alarming. And I mean, I thought about what the things you might say. I didn't think you were going to say there's going to be a planned attack by.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys think?
No, this is like shocking.
All of you have probably watched Sarah Adams' podcast, right?
Yeah.
She hasn't talked about this, right?
No.
No.
Like I said, this is shocking me.
No, it's so why would the United States have open borders after they left Afghanistan? They had to have like the United States had intelligence services had to be notifying the president and notifying Congress about possibilities of what Afghanistan would turn into. And when it turned into what it is now, they had to know and they probably said something. Why haven't we done anything with closed borders?
Actually, one of the problems is we lost 99% of intelligence collection in Afghanistan. So actually, we're not collecting most of this. So we're actually relying on the Taliban for intelligence collection in Afghanistan, and they're providing misinformation to the US government.
So your intel came from the Taliban? Or
The US government's intel came from the Taliban. My intel's better.
okay.
Hell yeah.
Well, I mean, you would, but why would the United States, so if there's terrorist organizations and we have open borders, then you would think the United States would say, let's close our borders. Let's do something.
Actually, the United States doesn't have the Taliban listed as a designated terrorist organization, and we have an official government relationship with them to include an intelligence sharing relationship with the Taliban right now.
Seems really smart.
Yeah, we should fire those people.
So yeah, there's that.
The garrison city.
So reactions, thoughts, comments. Well, yeah, before I open that up, so a couple key things there. So October 7th, and we're going to get back to spending time dealing with October 7th and the scriptures for that. I'm actually not going to have any screen shots or anything like that. We're just going to open the Bible and look at the notes and go through some Jonathan Cahn commentary on scriptures and the October 7th attack. But October 7th was a trial run for what they're planning to do in America. And it's going to be America and 4 other countries. So these radical Islamists are focusing on these 4 other countries. Well, what do we see in World War I? With the defeat of with the year 1335 in the Muslim calendar, we saw the loss of 4 empires: Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, and the Ottomans. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting thing there. So the folks that are carrying this out, their training is done. They're already trained. They're here. They're already here in America. And they're planning it for 2025. Here and 4 other countries. Revenge for the loss of Osama bin Laden. It's his son now leading all this. And it's his son who, out of Afghanistan, is with all of the support for these rebels in Syria. And so the game they're playing is they're not going to go after Israel right away. They're solidifying their base, and then they're going to go basically, because again, remember, little Satan, big Satan, death to America, death to Israel. So that's where their focus is going to be. So these are things that are there to be aware of and be prepared for. Now, what did I say at the beginning? God knows all this. God's in control. God allows some things to play out, but God never surrenders control. His hand is always on things. So with that, shared reactions, thoughts, comments, questions. Sister Carol.
About it, like nobody's gonna do anything, so.
It's I wouldn't say it's no one's gonna do anything. Again, she's working very closely with Boone on this report and some other things that she was doing related to October 7th. And so they're getting intel to the to appropriate people now, whether they act on it or not. But it's one of those things where when this is your daily life, when this is what you do for a living, while you still need to be sensitive and aware and alert to the significance of things, you're not as shocked as the average citizen like we are hearing, oh, wait a minute, back up. October 7th was the practice run for what they're going to do in America. Next year, they're already fully trained and they're already here. Okay, yeah, so that's an adjustment.
Driving trucks.
Yeah, Clay sees some things, yes, and yes.
I do think that many of them are in sanctuary cities and are being supported with a place to stay and food and all the rest of it by our government. Because they don't know who is who.
Yes, thank you for your tax dollars going to,
Buildings.
and so, but again, let's back up to the spiritual, and we'll close on this. We know that, again, zooming out, again, beyond the human players come and go. There's a spirit at work that's always been at work. You know, since Satan's rebellion, there's a spirit working anti-God and therefore anti-people of God. And as America had been pro-God, it was blessed, but as we're turning away from God, we're becoming more vulnerable, as we have seen. And so this spirit, the spirit of Antichrist that has been at work and is still at work, again, the Antichrist human guy himself, he might not even be born yet. We don't know. Could be, who knows? But the point is the spirit is still at work, regardless of the human factors. So while that spirit is at work, again, God knows everything that's going to happen. He is making some things happen. He is allowing other things to happen. But let me read Revelation 17:17. Again for us, very key verse, Revelation 17:17. For God has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. So it seems like the bad guys are winning. They're just playing right into God's hands. So as long as we stay true and faithful to him, be aware, not paranoid, and remember Jesus said, as you see these things happening, look up, your redemption is drawing near. Do not fear. So aware, but not paranoid. Trusting God, knowing he's got it all covered. We stay true to him. He'll guide us. There are times when he told Paul, hey, get out of here. They're going to arrest you. He told Paul, I want you to go over here so they can arrest you. And Jesus told his church, the apostles, there will be times where they're going to take you. They're going to bring you before the judges and the rulers. And that's when he says, don't even worry about what to say. The Holy Spirit will give it to you in the moment. God is with his people always. And as was said in Daniel, those who have insight will understand. How do we have insight? We stay in his word, like Daniel chapter 12 and 10 and through 11 and 12, leading into that. We stay in touch with each other. Just so you know, us pastors, we have pastors, preachers, we have a monthly Zoom Saturdays, first Saturday of the month, 7 a.m. We're having a special Zoom on Syria. On the 28th, that Brother Howard is leading. And so be in prayer for us as we discuss these things, going to be focused on Daniel 10 through 12. But recognizing that we want to have insight. We want to pray and seek the Holy Spirit. We want to look to his word, and we want to draw strength from each other and be an encouragement, because every time, as Jonathan Kahn had mentioned, the masks are coming off and evil's being revealed for what it is. Which means those who are truly on the side of the Lord are going to be seen for who we are and recognized. And we're going to be able to stand strong and stand together. And the Lord is going to be with us, and we win. So a little bit scary times and stuff, but again, we win. But any reactions, other thoughts, questions? Sure, let's.
When you said for other ones, is it really going to be countries that are supporting Israel, or the ones that are, what would we say, more important or valuable to try to take out first?
Great question. That's a very sharp question. Really appreciate your thinking there. Sister Leslie asks, so the other nations that they're targeting, is it going to be because of their support of Israel? Is it going to be because of other strategy? It's more strategic for them. Seeing the spirit that's at work, I would not be surprised if support of Israel, I would expect that to be a factor, but it could be too that they see these folks as stepping stones, as easier targets. How do bad guys and bullies work? Well, they go for the easy pickings, and this is how I win playing Risk too. I go to the easy pick. It's like I go to Australia and I just hold up there, build my army, and then I launch out. So you go to the easy pickings first, you build up your strength and consolidate, and then you go for the bigger targets as you go. So I think the Israel factor will be a factor, trying to weaken anyone supporting Israel, but also going after easier targets to build themselves up. And right now, Europe has weakened itself tremendously. Oh yeah. I just saw recently in England, the whole baby name thing. What's the most popular baby name? Most popular baby name for males in England? Muhammad. Yeah.
To say this, it seems to me that these nations are going to align themselves. The north and south, or the king of the south and the king of the north.
Yes.
That's in Daniel too.
Absolutely.
Right, how this is all coming into
Yeah.
close to the last days.
Exactly. And so the nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38, the places mentioned in Ezekiel 38, as we saw last time, a lot of them are in the Turkey, Syria area. King of the North and South, that's from the split after the death of Alexander the Great in the 300s BC. And so his kingdom was split 4 ways. 2 were weaker. The North and South became stronger. The North was Syria. We celebrate Hanukkah because it's the restoration after that king of the north, Antiochus Epiphanes IV, came in and desecrated the temple and all that stuff, Maccabee revolt and all that. So that was a type of the Antichrist back then, king of the north. And then king of the south was the Ptolemies in Egypt. And so Daniel 11 shows the back and forth relationship between them throughout history between the testaments, ultimately leading to future times with the king of the north that will be the Antichrist, looking to be that Syria, Turkey area, coming north of Israel. So yeah, so we do have the guidebook, and as we see things playing out, we can kind of see, okay, seems to be falling in. Don't put all your eggs in any one basket. Keep an open mind because things shift and change. So stay open, but just remember that, again, God's in control and he's got us. And as Brother Howard's fond of saying, are things falling apart or falling in place? And the answer is yes. And so this is how things are going. But again, God's got us, and he will be with his people. And as we draw closer to him and each other, we will be stronger and even brighter. And as Daniel says, those who have the insight will understand.
And how do you have the insight? You have to read the Bible and ask God to help you understand it.
One of my many favorite phrases from Brother Ken Lansdale, recall. You can't recall the Bible if you never put it in. You can't call it out if it was never in. I'm paraphrasing, but that was exactly. And that's why we're here. Anything else from anyone else for this evening?
The thing like what is happening in New York with the power, with so
Oh,
many
yeah.
people, or just kind of a combination of a lot of different things happening over like the United States.
Just as 9/11 was the Twin Towers, was the Pentagon, was aiming for the Congress and the White House, also all of those things. And so too, it seems like this next attack, because remember, this is Osama bin Laden's son, avenging the death of his father. And so it's going to be both America and a couple other European countries. And I think it's going to be big if it succeeds, if it's not stopped. And so I think it's going to be, the intention is revenge for the death of the father. And so that's wanting to make a statement. If the father did this, then the son's going to do that much more to really throw his weight around and show he's the guy. He's actually behind the scenes. Actually, she talks about this. He's actually behind the scenes of it, not taking credit, not getting in front of the cameras. He's staying behind the scenes. What's the famous line about Satan? He says, he does his best work because no one believes he's real, that he exists. Yeah, exactly. Very subtle and crafty. Yes. And so all of this, does this mean that the 3.5-year tribulation is around the corner? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe none of this is related to that. Might be just moving things a little bit closer to that, but it might still be ways off. I can't say, but all I can say is patterns do repeat and play out. People thought Hitler was the Antichrist. People thought, the Antiochus Epiphanes and the fourth was the Antichrist. And so we'll see how many times this plays out before it's the final. And so, but in the meantime, it's good for us to draw close to the Lord and each other and be in tune and be reassured that the more we are together and discussing these things, the less these things are going to happen to us and catch us by surprise. And so we've got strength and comfort in the Lord and in each other. So if nothing else from anyone else for tonight, I appreciate your time, and we will get back to the Dragon's Prophecy next week with scriptures related to October 7th, bringing us into 2024 and 2025. So we'll stop our screen share and we'll stop recording for now, and let's get ready to meet in the center and close out in our season of prayer.